Hey everybody, welcome to Connect Group. I'm Pastor Josh, and I'm really excited to be with you. I'm gonna be talking about dating. And I know the minute that I mention dating, there's a ton of preconceived ideas about what I'm gonna be talking about, because whenever the church talks about dating, it's like you got the trifecta, right? We're gonna talk about purity, sexual immorality, and lust, and I'm not really gonna talk about any of those. I'd rather talk about how I think in the church we sometimes take dating too seriously. And on the flip side, I also think we treat the rest of our relationships a little too flippantly. So I want to talk about both these things, and especially because I know I'm talking to Connect Groups, and for me, growing up in the church, my experience was that dating had a lot of weight to it. That when I engaged in a dating relationship, it was with the intent of getting married and procreating, and for Jesus. Like that's the level of seriousness that came with any dating relationship. Anytime I would ask a girl out on a date, it was like the subtext was, we might get married and have children together. You can't enjoy a first date with that subtext. I'm just gonna be straight with you. Like, it's too much. It's way too much. But I see it all the time. Whenever I'm talking to young adults in our church that are in that phase of life, you're looking for someone to date, there's this unspoken solidity to going out with someone. And there's this need that we feel to unload our life baggage on the first walk in the park. That you have to tell them everything, because if they don't know all these different dark parts of your heart and your experience, then when it comes time to marry you eventually, they might not want to once they figure that stuff out. And so you got to make it clear who you are at the beginning to protect yourself and to protect the relationship and make sure that they know what they're getting into. And it's so heavy, and when I hear that, and which I hear like more than once, it breaks my heart, because you're jumping to a level of depth in the relationship and missing the opportunity to just enjoy yourself, to just have fun, go to the arcade, save some of who you are for later. You don't have to go all in the very first week. We put so much weight and intentionality into our dating relationship, and then completely disregard the value and importance of all our other friendships. Here's the deal. In Matthew 24, it's the parable of the talents, and talks about how Jesus talks about how this guy, he gives out multiple different talents to different people according to their ability. And so each of us, in a very similar way, have different amounts of relational credit. And every relationship we have is like a bank. And so we choose where we invest that finite amount of credit in the people around us. Now, some of us have tons of relational credit. You're able to sit down with just about anybody and go deep, which is super cool. But then there are others of us, I'm probably more in this vein, where I have less relational credits. And so I have to be incredibly intentional about who I give those credits to, where I invest my time, thought, and attention, because I can only really do it really well with probably a group of like 5 or 10. And so there are some people who can only really have like 2 really close friendships. They just don't have the ability to invest in so many. So when it comes to dating, where you're investing that relational credit is incredibly important. And my hope for you is that you'll be intentional with that relational credit. That where you invest it isn't just gonna be in anyone who's interested in who you are, but it would be people that you actually respect, people that you've come to understand and know, people that respect you. And then my hope and my prayer is that it's out of those relationships, the ones you've taken intentionally already, the friendships that you've invested in, that's where you'll see a dating relationship come out of. Or even that's what one of your dating relationships could turn into. I really don't want to make it sound like dating has to be this really heavy thing. I want to separate dating from courting. And that's one of the issues I think we have is we combine those two experiences. One is getting to know someone, going out to dinner, watching a movie, doing something fun, lighthearted, without any like big subtext that we have to like address later. But then I think if there's someone you're dating and you're having tons of fun and you're investing more of your relational credit into that relationship, and then you get to the point where you need to have a DTR, define the relationship and see if this is something that could turn into courting. At that point, it's incredibly important that you've been intentional with your relational credit. At that point, you're basically saying like, you're the bank I want to invest in, like heavily. Like you're where I want to put my primary investment. And what can happen a lot of times is because we confuse dating and courting, we then still get to the point where we're now in these deep relationships, in these relationships that are heading towards marriage, but we still want to treat it with some of us still want to treat it with the simplicity of dating. And we want to go like, we're just feeling things out still, when we've already made a pretty heavy commitment. And we're still investing in tons of other relationships that are also progressing towards intimacy. At this point now, you've told this person you're committed to them, but then you're still investing more in other relationships. It's incredibly confusing, especially for the person you're trying to date. And it'll make the growth of that relationship very difficult. Even if you're someone who would say like, Josh, I'm incredibly introverted. Relationships are hard and they're complicated. I don't really have the emotional stability to engage that much. Here's the deal. In the beginning of existence, in the book of Genesis, literally the first thing that God says isn't perfect. He makes the world, he makes day and night, and he says it's good. He makes the plants, he says it's good. He makes the fish, he says they're good. He makes the animals, he says they're good. And then he makes man, and he said it is not good for man to be alone. And I'm gonna say it's not good for any of us to be alone. We really can't deny how necessary relationships are, how much we need people in our lives. And so I wanna demystify all this stuff. I wanna help you see that it doesn't have to be so complicated, that it actually is incredibly simple, that you can honor God with your relationship. I'm a big fan of relationships. I'm a big fan of dating. I'm a big fan of courting, and I think they're incredibly fun things. I do not think that we were only designed and put on this planet to procreate for Jesus. I think that dating relationships, courting relationships, marital relationships aren't just about having sex and making babies. It's so much more about fully engaging in the way that God designed us. The way that we were made to not be alone, that we were designed for relationship. Whether that ends up for you being in a romantic relationship or whether that ends up being in through a group of friends where you can be safe and be around people and you're literally right there right now. You're in a connect group and it's literally designed to be an environment where you can pursue these type of deeper friendships in an environment that's not judgmental, that you don't have to be scared of, that can be light and fun and doesn't have to be so weighty. So spend some time, talk with each other about where you've been relationally, how you've viewed relationships, what they mean to you, and if you struggle with the weight of simply dating or the issue of taking deeper relationships more seriously. I think you'll have some really interesting discussions because it's really amazing like how much we all experience these things and how little we talk about it. So have a good group.